Welcome to the October 18, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com Daily Podcast. Today we have an exciting exclusive interview with Burst developer Daniel Jones. This is your host, Space Marine, jumping right into the interview. So tell me about Burst.
Alright, so Burst Coin was invented in 2014 as a fork. It was a fork of NXT, which was a fork of BTC. So NXT was one of the early proof-of-stake coins. From there, the developers took and modified the algorithm from using proof-of-stake to using proof-of-capacity. Now, proof-of-capacity is a consensus algorithm based on the idea of how large of a plot or a size or a space or capacity that you have to contribute to the network, right? So if we look at that, what that means is instead of doing the constant hashing of proof of work, we do a one-time hash to an allocation of size that proves this is our capacity, and from there we read for the answers and for how long it would take to read to the answer to the disk, and that gives us the deadline, which gives us confirmation of the answer and deadline. This is our consensus algorithm in a nutshell. The deep dive part of that is versus our SHA-256, which is not very effective to writing to disk. It shouldn't be. We use a SHA-256, which is a very heavy IO-intensive algorithm that actually writes to the nonce or the actual platter itself, whether it be SSD or spinning disk. It still writes to the drive. So when you read, you're actually reading through millions of answers, billions of answers that are being generated on your machine that are out that output.
Alright, so it's kind of like intensive on the machine, but it's not really intensive on the bandwidth, basically.
Well, it's intensive on the machine during the plotting process. This is true because the Shibboleth has to generate, but you only plot once. You don't have to replot unless you change wallets or you choose to replot to align with a fork or something like that. Other than that, you only plot once.
Okay, so explain plotting, just for starters.
Alright, so plotting is, again, going back to proof of work comparison because most people understand that. Instead of generating a SHA or hashing output that's basically just discarded, we actually generate using the Shibboleth, which is different than the SHA, and it actually writes to the disk. And what we do there, the Shibboleth 256, is generate hashes and write to the actual disk. And from there, those are put into what's called a plot or a size allocation. In the case of like what I have, like I have 100 terabytes per one of my machine, one of my rigs. That is 100 terabytes of answers that I read every 4 minutes to see if I have the answer, right? So I have 600 total there with that, and that's how the reading works on finding the answer inside the actual plot. That answer is then compared to everyone else's answer. If you had the answer to the block, then you were then also compared to how long it would have taken you to read to the action. But basically what happens is we read from the answers, we compare the deadlines to how long it would take you to read the block, or read to the answer on the actual disk itself. At that moment, the reward is given based on that. So that's in a nutshell. Now, there are other parts of that, like net diff based on the size of the network, how much plots and sizes are available to the said network, dictate how much space and likelihood of answers and things like that in a given plot.
So basically, when you're plotting, you generate a ton of answers with Shibboleth, and then you read them, and that kind of proves how much capacity you have when you're reading it. Like, can you explain that a little better?
Yeah, so when you're writing to the output, right, the Shibboleth actually allocates to the nonce, which is the actual writable piece of a disk, right? So on your hard drive, or whether SSD or spinning disk, on the drive itself is these little spaces. These are called nonces. These are also cryptographic units as well. But in the nonce, you are writing to it. Where the SHA, you would not write to the nonce. You would just write to an abstraction of it. In the Shibboleth 256, you're actually writing to the actual disk. That's why it takes longer to plot at first. And so as you generate these answers, your machine is actually writing to the disk itself. Once it's written to the disk, this is a size based on the number of nonces. This gives us what is called the plot, i.e. the size of the plot is generated from the nonce. So each count has an example, right? So, I'll give you an example in one moment. So, like, say, for example, you have you have a byte converter, right? So, if I say, for example, that I'm going to have, we'll say 3.7 terabytes, most people have. I'm going to generate, a very large number of nonces. It's going to be in the billions of nonces, right? Because I'm writing to terabytes of space. So, every 4 minutes, when I look for the answer, I'm going to look through billions of answers, right? And if I have the answer, then I'm going to say, okay, I see the answer, and then I'm going to see how long it would have taken my device to read to that answer, and that's called the deadline, and that's how the comparison is made. Now, when we are writing the output of using plotting software, we're generating it based around the key, or the account ID, which ties it to this is the ID that's used here, the answers, and the allocation of space for this ID, i.e. the wallet ID.
Okay, I'm starting to understand this better now. So basically, is it true that not everyone has the answers, and the more space you have, the more answers you have?
This is true. Not everyone will have the answers. It's based on timing. It's based on when you generated your plot, what type of device, number of things, right? Each creation of answers is unique to itself, and your plot is unique to you. Now, some people will have similar answers. Some people will have the same answers to the same block. But what matters is how long it took to read to the deadline. And the reason why that's important is because depending on your setup and when you started plotting and when you started doing your run, basically each deadline could be different. So say, for example, even if you have the same answer, your deadline is going to be very different because when you wrote to your drive, there's no chance that you're writing it to the same device, same everything as someone else, right? So this prevents collision. And the reason that does that is because math ensures that no one would generate the same thing at the same time for the same deadline for the same read, because you would have to generate the same device on the same everything, right? And you would have to hope that everything was identical, and that's just not mathematically possible.
All right, so when someone finds the right answer, they get the block reward, right?
They are in runnings for the block reward. From having the right answer, you then have to look at how long it takes to read to where it was on the actual drive, right? So if it took, for example, if it would have taken me, 1 hour and 26 minutes to read to where it was on my disk, and if for you it took 3 minutes because it was easier to read to because of where you wrote it to on your disk, then you would get the answer. You would get the block versus me.
So when you have shorter deadlines, you win.
When you have shorter deadlines, you win because you win the actual target. Yeah. The problem is that at scale, people have the tendency to think that all of these nonces and everything are going to be identical, but they're not. They're unique to the time of generation. And so that's why the deadline is the other factor of the consensus to meet with that, because that's how you can see if user can read faster or get to the actual answer first, regardless if they just had the answer, right? And proof of work, you just get the answer, right? And in improved capacity, you have to not only have the answer, but you also need to have the correct deadline or the fastest deadline to get to there. Now, deadlines are not impacted by SSD or HDD. So whether it's spinning disk or solid state, it's irrelevant. They perform the same way.
All right, so is there a difficulty adjustment somehow so it maintains that 4-minute block time?
We have irregularities, so it may take a little longer, things like that, like a couple of minutes, maybe a second longer, things like that. That happens just like in any other coin. We have no fixed state response on that, if that's what you mean. It literally is adjusted based on those. So it's 4-minute block generation. If the answer is not received, then yeah, it goes a little longer.
So is this just designed in a way where there's like about a block found every 4 minutes across the network, the way it's designed?
Yes. Yeah, the way it's designed design is every Corvette the block is proposed. Everyone looks for that answer, finds the answer, finds the fastest deadline, block is then cemented into the chain.
So what's the burst block reward?
Burst block reward right now is at 769 on a 5% decay. But yeah, right now it's at 769.
And you said it started at 10,000?
Yeah.
Alright, so the max supply of burst is 2.158 billion, right?
There's 2,158,812,800 bursts. That's the maximum that we're max cap on.
Alright, I see the circulating supply is at 1.99 billion now. Do you think there's going to be any sort of price rise as mining gets really scarce?
Maybe. Again, just like with any other coin or anything else, right? Mining is only part of it. Right now, minting new coins, yes, minting new coins will become problematic. They become scarcer and scarcer. At a point, you will no longer mint new coin. However, you will still get mining rewards based on the transactions in the block, right? So, same thing will happen to Bitcoin. Same thing will happen to any other coin, right? As time goes on and you hit the max supply, the network continues to incentivize itself based on number of transactions on the network and the mining rewards built off of the transaction fees, right? So this is how the chain economics work for all cryptos, actually, outside of maybe proof of stake. But proof of stake is a little different because that operates as more of a business model, as you have master nodes and individuals who process and verify transactions versus individuals. And that's a centralized piece versus a decentralized network, such as proof of work or proof of capacity.
All right, so I see in the market history, Burst rose up to 900 satoshis right when it was launched. Then it dropped down to maybe as low as 100 satoshis, maybe slightly lower, steadied out. Well, actually, let me see. Is this saying it was at 16 satoshis? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Was it as low as 15 satoshis briefly or something back then?
So there was a couple of things that were happening last year, right? Some people made some mentions on Twitter and things like that. At one point, it went up to, I think it was 10 cents. Yeah, 10 cents was this kind of cap. That was earlier this year. It was before I got involved. I started getting involved with Burst in March of this year. Well, April timeframe, but yeah, that was before my time. The technology drew me in because proof of work isn't scalable in mass. Because Burst solves a couple of problems with the actually dealing with deploying into an environment that actually doesn't have a stable power infrastructure. So, like I tell people, it's easy to say, hey, well, Bitcoin, everything, that's great. The problem is they can't keep the freaking street light on. How the hell are they going to keep a miner on?
So I see Burst.
If your power infrastructure doesn't support, massive amounts of power, how are you going to justify telling people in a remote area to start running Bitcoin mining? It doesn't work. You can't do that. Makes no sense.
So proof of capacity is very energy efficient.
Correct, because all it utilizes is hard drives. The only time it uses or expels a large amount of energy is in the beginning when you start plotting, but even then, that's minimal compared to what you will see long term for proof of work, because proof of work has to constantly be doing that, or proof of capacity does it once.
Alright, so this is one of the few cryptocurrencies where someone could actually mine it at home, even if it's a little profit, it's actually a profit.
Yes. So these similarities of where it sits now to where Bitcoin was in the early days, you can mine it on almost anything, and you can. Recently, I'm sure you may have saw or you may not have, but right now people are mining on Android phones again with Burst Coin. And people are able to run it on anything. I've seen people running a miner on a Nest. The thermostat. Yeah, I've seen one running on there. I've seen one running on just about anything, including the portable drive that we use for proof of life. All of those things are part of what makes Burst a unique area right now. As far as proof capacity and the expansion of the consensus is because there's so much opportunity for low energy and cheaply or cost-effective ways of being able to distribute, right? So, I can tell somebody, hey, go start mining Bitcoin, but you're going to need to spend $1,100, or go buy an external hard drive, slap it to your computer you currently have, start plotting, start mining. It's a lot easier. You know what I mean? That value, it's a lot easier for me to tell you, go spend $100 on an external drive. You want to just experiment with it versus, if you want to get started, you're going to need a couple of big GPUs and a system fast enough to be able to process it. You know what I mean?
So, I see Burst went up from like 20 Satoshis in early 2016. It rallied versus Bitcoin, actually. And first in middle of 2017, it rallied to like, maybe, let me see, almost 1,000 Satoshis. And then, again, in January, during the big rally, it went up to like 600, 700 Satoshis. And now, it's still at about 150 Satoshis. Maybe actually 150. So, it's been going up long-term relative to Bitcoin. Why do you think that is?
Well, so the reason is that, this is a real network, right? So versus like a lot of the ICOs and things like that, every miner, everything there, just like the proof of work side, it is real people involved and real development, community-driven, community-developed software. So what you see is a direct representation of that network beginning to grow, the number of people, the exposure, that kind of things, right? Like it's, it's completely community-driven. So like there's not like a marketing, you know what I mean? Like it's, like there's no influx of ICO money to pay for marketing and things like that. So everything that Burst does as a community and accomplishment for people within that community who choose to be a part of it, right? And that's kind of where it's taking to the early days of BTC for me because, having been involved since 2009, I saw this happen once before, and I'm seeing it happen starting again now, and this is exciting to me, not because of any, not because of what it represents as far as to some to make money. For me, what it represents is a better way of being able to mine and to be able to participate in a globally distributed network that now the bar is so low, anyone can get involved. And that's powerful because now more people can be a part of a network and more people can participate in that network, thus making it stronger. And that's super critical for the growth of blockchain and the growth of Burst and every other coin. But right now we're starting to see Burst really starting to grow in the sense that more people are knowing about it. We're starting to see that actually start to take flight now, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, so I'm noticing, like, when the altcoins rally, Burst rallies a lot more, and that's probably because of its merits, because people do the research and they see how Burst really is unique, and it's a good thing, so they buy it versus, Bitcoin when the altcoins rally in general. So that's what I'm noticing.
Correct, and what you also see is that there's a large number of people who actually are using the coins in the real world. Their business is starting to accept it, peer-to-peer, peer-to-entity. It's interesting because, a lot of coins strive to be able to be used, right? Burst can be used, and you can go do it anywhere, right? Like that's the funny part is that we see a lot of these ICOs and stuff, and they're pitching ideas and things, but the problem is that there's a lot of community-driven coins that already have those features and have had them, but they don't have marketing around it, so people just don't know that it's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, hopefully this article and interview helps, so people figure it out.
We hope it does. I mean, again, we hope it does because, more people need to look at it and understand that, proof of work at scale is not possible because of how much energy it uses, As each new node of proof of work comes on, difficulty goes up. Now, to be fair, same thing happened in Burst. However, Burst and other, or Burst in this case, actually only one, proof capacity going, what you have here is interesting. Say, for example, you as an individual decide you want to start mining Burst. You start mining Burst on your hard drive. Well, then one day you decide you don't want to mine Burst anymore. Guess what? You can still use your hard drive. You just delete the plot, and you still have a device that you can use versus an ASIC, right? If you're done with Bitcoin, and you bought an ASIC, you now just have an ASIC, or that ASIC's antiquated because a new version came out. The thing is that hard drives, you don't have to worry about that because you have a longer lifespan and the use for it, right? So if my 100 terabytes, 600 terabytes total, I have 624 right now, and I'm about to go up to a petabyte. If I stop mining burst tomorrow, guess what? I still have 624 terabytes of data that I could use, right? I have 624 terabytes that I could use for something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so...
And that's kind of useful because when you start talking about deploying in a country such as Africa and others, and you start telling them, hey, you're going to have to mine BTC, they're not going to be able to mine with a GPU to get any value improvement, right? Because it's just not feasible in Bitcoin right now. So you take that into consideration, you have to run ASICs, okay? ASICs take about 1,700 watts worth of power an hour. Okay, how are you going to tell someone in a village that has a hard time with power as it is, that you're going to need 1,700 watts to start validating transactions and run your own miner node? Yeah, that's a hard sell. You see what I mean? That's a hard sell.
So what's the total network capacity of Burst right now?
The estimated network size at this time, and you can see the growth, from the last hard fork, we had a little bit of problem because some people did not change. Right now, we have 272,000 terabytes in circulation.
Wow.
To give you some perspective there, that's a lot of space. That's a lot.
All right, so I just do some simple math and calculate how much each terabyte generates, right?
Yeah.
But how much, can you just tell me, what's the profitability per terabyte per day or per week?
Yeah, it's one per day. One per day based on that. Maybe right now I think it's 1.625 per day per terabyte. So, yeah, it's roughly about a cent. However, your power cost is minimum because of the fact that hard drives do not impact power cost that much. It's typically 3 watts per hour. So if you're doing, USB external hard drive connected to a desktop that you already leave on, you're literally not spending any power to turn your drive space into burst.
All right, so you get over $10 per day when you have a petabyte.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And how much does a petabyte cost? The lowest price you can find?
Well, it all depends on how you want to do that. So there are different strategies for that, right? So you have some people who do all external. You have some people that use the Storinator model, which is the giant storage arrays that you find on eBay, 48 bay. They, rack 2 or 3 of them up, 10 terabyte Western Digital Reds, or they bust out some of those external drives. They find certain ones that have, they ship them, such as Seagate is known to ship some very nice hard drives inside their USB external hard drives, and you just pop that case off and do your own research to find out which one's right the fastest. And you pop those off and plug them into the Storinator bay, you save yourself a bunch of money and still being able to add capacity because, 8 terabytes of USB external hard drive, about $125, right? For 8 terabyte of internal, like we're using just SATA driven, right? They can run up to $250 to $300. So you have to do your math and shop around on what you're doing and making sure that you get the most bang for your buck because one person's mileage is different than another's.
Do you think it could be profitable at this point to actually buy hard drive space and then mine burst? Does it become profitable?
It will become possible right now at this very second. If you bought a petabyte, you're probably not going to be profitable for a while. Now, the mining transactions and things, or the memory transaction on the chain go up, things like that, yeah, it will become profitable. But as it sits right this second, buying a petabyte, you need to do some research and figure out what your price point is, and from there you can determine whether or not it's going to be profitable. But, again, like I said, the strategy you use to accrue a petabyte is different than the strategy I would use or a strategy that someone else would use. So based on those strategies, you decide, and from there you would have your own math to do that. And I can get you in touch with someone who has been a long-time Burst community member who is up to, I think, 2 petabytes And I think he's expanding. His goal is to get up to 10 over the next 2 years.
That's cool. And, what else? So what do you expect the price of Burst to be in the future?
I expect the price of Burst to go up in the future. I don't like speculating on prices because I'm not a day trader, and I don't know realistically what that would look like, because trading value price is much different than the value price of what people are using it for. So it's different, right? Like, because right now you take a look at BTC, right? BTC is worth, well, the community feels about $6,200 because it's current trade value. However, how much of that is just sorted values based on people trying to be greedy and making money off of BitMEX or whatever, on people attempting to liquidity trade, right, or margin trade.
Tell me about the on-chain storage.
All right, so Cloudburst takes advantage of a transaction, right? So in a transaction, you can put 1,000 bytes in here, right? Each block is 177 kilobytes right now, and in transaction per second throughput. Now, what Cloudburst does, which was written by Kurt Schiffer, I give him props on that because he's done a lot of really interesting things for the Burst community. But what happens there is he takes the file and basically distributing it across a whole series of transactions. Those transactions are then sent to various wallets. Now, those wallets are typically just generated at the time because they're all the Reed Solomons, right? So from there, the transaction is distributed amongst several transactions. They're just stored on chain at that point. You can reconstruct it by using Cloudburst, giving it the ID, and it will pull the transaction down and create the file for you, and that's how that works. So versus IPFS or something, which is a secondary service and not an immutable service, I might add. The chain itself, in this case, is actually being used for the purpose of storing an immutable record or ledger of an entry of said file and or files that you've uploaded.
All right, so how much would that cost per, gigabyte?
You wouldn't use it for a gigabyte. The max cap on it right now is 1 meg, and the reason why is because the scope of the tool is to be used for various things such as legal documents, things like that, title deeds, information that you would normally need to keep people honest about. That's why it's there. It's not for use for videos and stuff like that. You can store videos on there, and it's just not an effective way of doing it because the cost is high, but it's a one-time cost. So, for example, if I upload, we'll say, 400 some kilobytes worth of files, like I did the other night during a live stream, so it's like 30-something bursts, right? So that 30 cents guarantees now that transaction is stored there permanently, which means that at any point in time, knowing that transaction ID and having a node or a copy of the chain, I can literally extract it from there, right? And that's what this is all about, is being able to have the immutability and being able to use it in the correct sense. Now, there are other people who say, oh yeah, let's put gigs of storage and things like that. Problem is that blockchain's not necessarily good for that at one time, right? Like, you wouldn't want to dump 600 gigs worth of your desktop files onto the blockchain, because most of those files you're going to delete. Right? I mean, how many files do you leave on your computer that stay there for 10 years, right? Not that many. So, truthfully, if you're storing it on the chain, does it need to be there permanently, or does it only need to be there for a temporary amount of time? If you ever answer temporary about anything, then you should never use on-chain. Because if it's temp, you shouldn't use an immutable service for that, right? That's the logic. Because if you are using an immutable service, such as Cloudburst, or using a Burst blockchain, or any other blockchain for that matter, at the point at which something becomes immutable, what happens is it's always there, right? So you can't prune it off because it's on the chain. And that's why it's important to understand what you're uploading before you upload it, right? Like, obviously, me uploading, a 30-second video of something could have value for myself, but if I don't need that in 6 months, or if it wasn't pertinent to something for court or anything like that, then what would be the purpose of making everyone else store it for me, right? Like, this is a personal decision, not a decision enforced to you by the service. This is just a decision you, as the individual, would need to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it would have to store it across many blocks for if it's like a megabyte, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's stored across many blocks.
Are there any other applications like that with Burst?
Huh? Yes, there are other applications on Burst. There's Burst Coupon. There's a couple of new services that are coming out this week. We have smart contracts. We have Burst alerts. We have, recently the community started getting better about things. And, yeah, I mean, like, there's just been a steady influx of applications and stuff. I mean, as far as D-apps, like the Ethereum-based apps, I mean, those things are totally different in the sense that most of them prepay for everything. In the case of Cloudburst, you pay as you go. Like, it's not prepaid for you. You pay as you go.
Can you generate tokens through Burst? Because I see it like a tab on my wallet that says generate token. Is that like a different type of token, or can you actually generate a crypto with Burst?
You can generate crypto with Burst. It's called the Asset Exchange. So there's also a tab there in your wallet that should say Asset Exchange. If you click on that, you can do some research. There's some assets. There have been some ICOs that have started off Burst. There's a number of things within the asset store that you can do, including generating tokens, being able to trade tokens, being able to do your own decentralized exchange. It's already built into the wallet.
All right, so I'm seeing you could generate asset on the Burst blockchain for $10.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. It's just like it has the same functionality as like Burst, pretty much.
Yes.
All right, so that might be a good.
Basically, so right now, if you want to generate it's 1,000 coins, and basically you can generate a token. So like right now, I have an asset exchange. We'll say, let's pull one up. I have Crypto Maps and EcoBurst, right? And EcoBurst is a token that's associated with someone who's running a node, doing some other stuff, and I'm buying a percentage of holding into that. Same thing as Crypto Maps. They're like an ICO. They have a service that they offer for location of people that accept cryptocurrencies, things like that. The problem is that it's decentralized. So can I express this enough? Just because it is on there does not mean that it is a legit thing. You should do your own research. And the thing is that in regards to assets, everyone can post their own asset regardless of whatever it is. So you have to keep that in mind. Same thing with the crowdfunding. Same thing with the marketplace. You will see a lot of ridiculous stuff. There is a new service that just came online recently called Private Chains, or P-Chains. This allows you to have a private chain, private blockchain that you can decide how you want to do the mining and things like that. It's in the early phases right now. It is an alpha. It's continuing. You can have your own private blockchain, and you can host your own token structure, everything like that on there. It utilizes the Burst messaging protocol, which if you've already taken a look at your wallet, you can see that you can send direct messages through messages, or you can send them through the transaction. If you send it through arbitrary messages later on can be pruned if we chose to as a community, but transaction messages cannot. So when you start looking at this, you start to get a real feel for what you can and can't do within the chain itself, right? There's a lot of interesting things that are going on there. There's a lot of cool stuff that can be done. The thing is just now is it's starting to be unlocked, and that's where things sit.
Okay, is there anything I'm missing about Burst?
Community stuff too. That I've only talked about the technical side and that kind of thing, but there's other facets to it, as well as like the POCC, because we didn't really talk about the development. So the POCC, or the Proof Capacity Consortium, led by Rico and team, they're the core developers and core contributors to the Burst project. They stepped in last year. after some time, those Bitcoin talk stuff. But they stepped in and have taken Burst from where it was, where basically not being maintained anymore, not being contributed to where it is today in regards to keeping the development up and making changes and increasing the throughput and making it a viable resource. Because at first, when I first stepped into Burst, it was only doing one transaction per second, and now it's doing 80. Also, there was a bunch of things that were not quite there. There was some weaknesses, things like that have been steadily improved. And that's all thanks to the Improvement Capacity Consortium, or POCC, as well as community members who are contributing as well. Like, the POCC is just like kind of one group of people that work on the core blog. There's several groups of people who work on a lot of different pieces of Burst, and it's important that everyone gets kind of told that, because right now no one actually. Some people, if you look at it from the outside, don't actually know what's going on. It can be confusing because you may see someone use an acronym that you don't know, and it's like, huh? What does that mean, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting parts to Burst that they get overlooked. Like I said, the core development team, just like everyone else, we all do this as a labor of love. Like, we're not getting paid. So, for us, it's a matter of delivering a usable piece of software because we use it. And we tell people and we talk about it, we use it with them, they use it, and like that's part of what goes on with it, right? And so there's the technical side of the projects and stuff that's being done, but there's also the other side, the personal side, and the side of adoption, things like that.
Well, I appreciate all the information on Burst. And, let me know if there's anything more. Like right now, tell me, is there anything else you want to say about Burst?
I mean, I talk about this every day, so I don't know if I missed something or not. So I was just kind of like making sure the highlights are hit. We have tethered assets coming up. I don't know if you've looked into that. Tethered assets will be live on block 600K is the estimation. And what tethered assets will allow you to do is to generate an asset tethered to the real world value utilizing the Burst chain.
All right. Well, thank you for all the information on Burst. I think we have plenty.
All right, man. Well, thank you, and have a great rest of your evening.
That's all we have for you on this October 18th, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com Daily Podcast. Thank you again to Daniel Jones, a Burst developer, for explaining Burst to us. Come back tomorrow for another exciting episode, and go to BitcoinNews.com 24/7 for the full spectrum of Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto analysis. This is Space Marine signing out, going back to space.